Yeah, hello, welcome. Now let's talk about the Firepower Enhancement build for the Artillerist. And this build is a little bit different than the first Firepower Enhancement build that I made. And the reason for that is that after playing the build for a long time, I wanted to change some stuff to cater to some problems in the build. So let's talk about it. First thing we have is the stats. So the first thing we go for is crit and spic. Mostly you go for full crit and you lose one ring for spic or one earring. It doesn't actually matter, okay? Which one you go for because of reasons that we'll talk about it later. But this whole build is all crit, so you get a lot of crit resources, so that depends on which crit sources are you gonna go for. Okay, now after that you go with the hallucination set. So hallucination set works best. You can actually work around the sets you can play. You can kinda go for entropy set, no, not entropy, salvation, nightmare, all of these sets, but ultimately I would say all of them are, there's not that much difference, but hallucination the best one in my opinion for this set. Now when it comes to engravings for this build, you want to go for Firepower Enhancement first, go Crutch and Keen Blunt Hitmaster. These are the four core ones. After that you can go Barricade or Curse Doll. You can also switch Hitmaster for Barricade if you want to go for engravings only, because Barricade is a lot cheaper and the effectiveness of the difference is not that much. But in a full build, Firepower Enhancement, Grudge, Keen Blunt, Hitmaster, Curse Doll or Barricade. Curse Doll is a lot better in my opinion. I'll tell you why. The reason why I'm gonna switch it. So Barricade is a lot cheaper. So if you don't have the money, you don't have the option. But if you have the money, Curse Doll in one hand will make you deal a little bit more damage, which is like 20 million per minute. So let's say you get a 1 to 3% more damage. But when it comes to the Curse Doll, it makes you safer to play, actually not riskier, because when you play Barricade, you use your shields all the time to have a shield up for you to deal the damage and get the Barricade effect. But when it comes to Curse Doll, you don't have to use your shield that all the time, so you can keep it when you actually need it. And if you're gonna go for 5x3 plus 1 or plus 2, you can go for Barrage level 1. That could help, or you can go for Adrenaline. You can kind of keep the Adrenaline up, but that goes for once you get there, you can, it's not that much of a problem. You can go for Adrenaline or Barrage, but it's not one of the characters where you kind of really need to go 5x1, 5x3 plus 1. Okay, now after that, let's talk about the skills you're gonna use. When it comes to your skills you're gonna use, it's gonna be a lot of damage, so you need a lot of tripods. First thing, we're gonna go for Enhanced Shell, Quick Rage on it. That's a must rule, and you want to have it level 4 only with Armor Destruction on it. You have this is your counter and your stagger. So the reason I switched this ability for forward march was, this is the most important difference in this build and the skill point distribution, is that we were lacking a lot of damage in the old build when it came to Firepower Enhancement Artillerist. Back then, Artillerist, before the whole rework, Artillerist had a lot of stagger, and it was one of the top stagger in the game. Now not really, because you don't play with the ability. That's why I wanted to bring it back, because I felt like we're lacking stagger, and stagger is kind of useful. So when it comes to this ability, weak point or focus for either one. This is for stagger and this for weak point, so that depending on what you need, you can go for heat. That makes more damage, and chained attack makes you hit twice, which makes you counter actually twice, so it makes it an easier way to counter. Overwhelm is a must, and then you have summon turret with bleed, so more cooldown for the turrets, damage and damage. Okay, so after that we have flamethrower. So flamethrower, you want to go quick prep, shield and flamethrower, the flame one for more damage. Kinda, you don't really need range or collision, so you're stuck with shield even if you're not gonna play Barricade. After that we have energy field. You have mana, more duration, and makes you immune. When it comes to the first one, mana or focus, there is not that much difference. So mana will make it all, you can always use it, so even if you don't have mana, you use it, so it's good if a boss takes your mana or anything. And there's nothing else you can go. Focus, when you're low HP you can get barrage meter, you don't really need that. And release, you'll deal very small amount of damage to a boss when you're close to it, so not negligible. Okay, when it comes to the runes, you can have anything on it. You can put quick recharge, you can put protection for more shield, you can put whatever you want. Heat bomb, you must have the gale wind maxed out, so you have damage, and this turns the ability into a hold, which makes it deal more damage but have higher cooldown. And actually it's not, if you don't like the idea of hold, you can kind of go mobile, which makes you move while shooting. Like, it's not a must to go for this makes you deal more damage. These are easier to play. Okay, after that we have air raid. Not a specific rune you need, you can go whatever you want. You can go rage, and I like, honestly, because I feel like I don't need anything, I'm trying to maximize the quick recharge we use, and then after that some rage for more attack speed. We have for attack speed, damage, and then you can go homing barrage, so you can go for range and damage. Also, for when it comes to the range one, you can go for guiding missile to shorten the time for the bomb to drop, so you don't lose the damage, basically miss it. So if you want that, but that's only good when you play with Curse Doll, because if you play with the barricade, you want it to take time for you to use the flamethrower first. Okay, so that's basically all the skills and the gems. Now when it comes to the gems for this build, is so direct. Damaging abilities get damage and cooldown. So damage and cooldown, damage and cooldown, and damage and cooldown, and damage and cooldown. These are 4. And then the last 2 you're gonna get are gonna be, so 1 shield will get 1 armor, flamethrower will get a damage, and the counter one will get a cooldown. That's it. So it's a very straightforward way. When it comes to your bracelet that you're gonna play with, I would recommend to play with anything you feel that you're lacking. Mostly you wanna have, if you're gonna have crit, you can lose the crit in something else. If you're gonna have spec, then it's just, spec is straight up good. And I'm gonna change this bracelet anytime. But most important one you can have is spec. Crit if you need the crit to lose it in somewhere else, which we'll get into that in a few seconds. And you wanna have swiftness if you feel like you're lacking out swiftness. You'll feel like you're slow all the time with this build, so maybe you wanna add the swiftness, but like 100 swiftness that you get is not that much speed. It's 2%, it's not that much, so 2% move speed. That's up to you. But I highly recommend having a spec or like a bracelet that gives you some spec to deal more damage, and also having ways to deal damage. So I have multiple bracelets that I wear and I keep them with me all the time. Anyways, let's talk about the chords. Now when it comes to your chords, actually this is very important. If you have Lost Wind and you only have Lost Wind and you don't want to play with Light of Salvation, you're gonna get 7% crit. So that's where I'm talking about. The 7% crit is very important. If you're gonna play with Lost Wind and have 7% crit, you can lose the crit from somewhere else, from the bracelet, from your stats. If you're willing to play Light of Salvation for 7% damage, or even 15%, so obviously if you have it maxed out, it's so much better. Then once you play with Light of Salvation, I highly recommend to have a crit at least on the bracelet. So ideally I would say go for Light of Salvation, go for crit rate as much as you can, but 1 earring spec, and the bracelet have crit and spec on it, and try to increase the spec, try to get higher quality so you have the crit and the spec as I again. So quality will actually matter a little bit in this build. Okay, now let's talk about how the build is played, and we'll continue about the ups and downs in this build. So this build is very straightforward. Your whole damage comes after you fill up your meter, so you want to just deal some damage at the early to fill up your meter. And your combos are like this: you throw the 2 nukes and use flamethrower to have the shield on you, and then you can use the big shield for heat bomb. Now if you don't have barricade, in the other hand, you don't have to use the shield at any time, you can just go for damage. So the downtime that you have between the difference in cooldown between the shield and the heat bomb, you don't have to worry about that when you have Curse Doll. Also you don't have to necessarily use the nukes with the flamethrower, but ideally you want to do that just because it's like the rotation is good. So your rotation is simple. Always have your enhanced shield on, so you have the negative. Leave 1 turret on, not the 2 turrets all the time, since the bosses move, and just go for the 2 nukes, flamethrower, shield when you need to, and heat bomb whenever you can, but also make sure that you're safe when you use it. And one more thing, you can cancel animation with anything. You can cancel this ability if you want. Also, if you use a bomb, and you can cancel some animations in it, so that's also a good way to go for. When it comes to this build, the ups and downs in this build are very simple. This build deals good damage, makes you tanky because of the firepower enhancement, and it's not risky. So overall it's a simple way but it's a simple build that deals a lot of damage. I would say some of the downs in this build is that there is no skill cap that you need to hit for you to deal so much more damage, so the damage of this build is kind of limited. Then for example, a back attack character who can always back attack and deal more damage, but on the other hand you can get to do a lot of things. You don't necessarily lose a lot of things, so it's a good character. One of the problems is one of your benefits actually. You can easily miss your highest damaging abilities because they're delayed, but in the same time that actually helps you because you can run around and you don't have to worry a lot about losing HP. So that's really important, okay? And one last thing we're gonna talk about is the price of the build. So when it comes to the price of your build, there is one thing important you want to know. This build is very cheap because of the engravings you're using are not expensive. But there is a big problem when it comes to this. Your damage comes from most of your abilities, so when it comes to the late game and getting all the gems and the tributs, if you didn't make an old character that had tributs, you need all the tributs and you need all the gems you can get your hand of. So that makes it more expensive. So in mid gameplay, this build is very low price, but in game it's gonna be very expensive. So that's the difference. Also, when it comes to your stats and quality, you want to reach as much quality as you can, because the higher quality, the more efficient the build is gonna be. So yeah, but that's basically everything about the firepower enhancement. And honestly, I would highly recommend playing, if you're playing Lostark right now, I would highly recommend this build for you, just because it's easy, really good. You're gonna get to experience the game different way and you're not gonna be scared all the time. So it's a very good build. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.